welcome to the Unshackled Moms Alliance podcast. Today is a guest whose voice is boldly and beautifully challenging in the silence around one of the most heartbreaking and hidden struggles in Christian families, domestic violence. Robin is the founder of a powerful platform where faith and truth and healing begin. She lives in sunny Florida, a proud Jeep mama, and she also equips women to grow with purpose and power. Her signature program, Time to Bloom, is helping women reclaim their voices again, as well as their worth. And now, through Join Time to Bloom Online, she has built an educational site dedicated to the recovery and prevention of domestic violence through education and spiritual support. This is more than just a conversation. This is a call to freedom. So if you've ever felt stuck, silenced, unsure whether God sees your pain, God is here to remind you that you are made to bloom. Welcome, Robin. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great too. How's it in sunny California, or not California, you'd be in Florida. How's it in Florida?
Wonderful. I love it. I'm definitely a Florida girl. I love it here. It's nice and warm and wonderful.
So have you always lived in Florida?
Yes.
I love it. I love it. I was just getting, I was looking at annual tickets to Universal Studios. And so you stay in their hotel and you have a certain week or whatever during the year that you want to go down there. And in Florida sounds so much fun.
It is. It's wonderful.
I mean, there are so many things that are great about the Pacific Northwest, but I always love to go and explore other places as well. Okay, so before we dive in, tell us a little bit about your heart behind your programming. And then how did your mission begin?
So I'm a survivor of both childhood abuse and domestic violence. And for me, because of my past, I made a lot of really poor decisions as an adult, and wound up sitting in my house after my ex-husband had been arrested, and really feeling like I needed God to really reach down and help me through what I had been through and help me not to prevent ever going through that again.
Yeah.
So what I put together that I teach to women who are survivors is actually inspired by my own journey through this process. And my heart was, once I started seeing how many women were affected by domestic violence, that somebody had to do something, that we had to start talking. So there's actually 2 different live classes that are on Time to Bloom right now. There's God's Design, which is for survivors, and there is Connecting Hearts, which is for couples who are struggling to communicate.
Both are so important.
Yeah, thank you.
So you have a little pot of gold at the end of your rainbow, and you got married again not too long ago.
Yes, I did.
So tell me a little bit about that redemption story.
Well, for me, when I think about what happened with Keith, he's a protector personality. He works as a volunteer firefighter. He's very much a servant. And for us, we relate to each other because we have these discussions. We don't believe in raising our voices to each other. We've both been through difficulties before. And so we had some very straightforward conversations about what we wanted things to look like. And it's resulted in, I think, a extremely healthy relationship. And when I look at this as compared to what I came out of, I always tell people it's convinced me even more that you don't have to raise your voices. You don't have to name call. You don't have to do any of that stuff. When there's a conflict, and there will be conflict, it can be settled in a way that's actually peaceful and helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. You just have to put some great tools in your toolbox to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So I just think that that is just so encouraging because I know a lot of the young moms that I talk to and that I work with that are in maybe not the greatest relationships. There's, either physical or extreme emotional abuse happening. They are of the mindset that, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be it. This is what all I'm destined to have is either this relationship or one like it for the rest of my life. So I love when, there's that redemption story of, no, it doesn't always have to be like this. Whether you are in a relationship now and you just need the tools to kind of process and work through, or you have that pattern of consistently being in a violent relationship over and over and over again, that you can learn how to cope and create better relationships in your lives.
You definitely can.
So one of the toughest conversations in Christian families is around domestic violence and the sanctity of marriage. I know I personally have talked to several pastors who just have said, you know what, that just doesn't happen in my church. So what do you say to women who feel trapped in an abusive marriage because of the belief, that this is a covenant relationship, this is a covenant that I made with God, and yet every night I have to put makeup on to hide the bruises, or I have to, make excuses when I have to go to the doctor because my arm is broken for the fourth time.
Well, I think what's important to realize is that God actually designed us with limitations. And a lot of what I talk to women who have been through abuse about or are going through abuse, I tell them that their body's made to function a certain way. Okay, we all have a fight or flight. And when you're in hostile, traumatic relationships, that kicks into gear and can take over. And it's designed actually to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what you have to appreciate about this is under normal circumstances, my amygdala, that's my fight or flight center of my brain, has a stronger connection to overpower my logical brain and my memory than the other way around. My logical
Mm-hmm.
brain and the upper parts of my brain have a horrible time trying to calm down my amygdala once I'm there. Okay.
Yep.
You're made that way for a reason. I use the example, if you're walking down the road and there's a stick in the road and you jump back because you think that's a snake, you may look a little silly, but that reaction is there for a reason, right?
Right.
If I continued walking and it's a snake, I'm going to have a big problem.
Yeah.
So what you have to be able to appreciate is that when you're in those types of environments, your amygdala, your fight or flight, is quick to take over. And when you are constantly in that kind of environment, you can get stuck there. And so your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, they all suffer because of it.
Yep.
When you're out of those environments, the problem that you have is now you've actually basically been conditioned to respond in given ways, right? So if I see something that causes me to remember my past experiences, I react like it's happening now because I need to defend myself. And you need to be able to walk through the process of unlearning that. Does that make
Yep.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is such an incredibly great example because it's a concrete example of the snake and the stick, and like it's one that we can all relate to. And I don't know that everybody knows about the different parts of the brain and how that affects emotions and how it affects, like, those traumas can also affect you physically, which I don't think a lot of people realize.
No, they don't. There's actually a study that's called the ACE study. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. It's
No.
adverse childhood experiences. And what they found is that the more of those experiences, alcohol and addiction in the family, mental illness in the family, physical child abuse, sexual child abuse, neglect, a bunch of different things. They asked people about all those things, right? And then they took the score, and what they found out is the more of those things you experience, the more likely you are as an adult to suffer from not only mental health issues, but things like hip and knee replacements,
Yep.
lung and heart issues, all kinds of physical problems, because what happens is when you're knocked into your fight or flight, your body becomes inflamed. So you go through this process of experiencing these traumatic events, becoming inflamed, going through the process of having to kind of work through it and go back down, and then again and again and again, around we go, right?
Yep.
So it eventually has a physical toll on your body.
Yep.
All things work together.
That is so incredibly true. I know I had an incredibly traumatic childhood, and also was in a domestic violence relationship. And I know even to this day, I did not equate the two, but for it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, where I would get really dizzy, and I had for like hours, and I would throw up, and it would just be horrible. And it wasn't until I found some research that showed, vestibular migraines are very much connected to trauma, and your body just is like, okay, we don't know anymore. Now when we smell something, it could be from an experience. And so now, like, my brain is having a hard time connecting with my nervous system. And so they just get all screwed, like, fine, we'll just make the whole world spin.
With migraines, there's actually this fleshy part of your finger right there that you can apply pressure to, and it helps with migraines. It also helps calm down your amygdala. It basically cuts back the blood flow to that part of your brain, so it reduces the energy.
Oh, that's great. So I don't have any pain in my migraine, but I do like the whole regular. So can you show, and because I know there are also listeners who do have migraines. So it's like right here.
Yeah, it's that kind of the web part, the fleshy part of your finger.
Yeah.
And what you do is you can just massage it and take a few minutes to massage it. It will eventually cut back the blood flow to your amygdala and help calm you down.
Oh, wow. All right. Look, we're learning new tips on this show. I love it. All right. So I know that we're both deeply passionate about this. Our Unshackled Moms Alliance retreat is focused on helping women break free from shame, silence, and yes, even cycles of domestic violence that the church has sometimes enabled. What has been your experience walking women through this kind of healing?
Well, as far as the church goes, or as far as the experience for the women goes?
Experience of women.
I think one of the biggest things that happens, and it was for me too, the biggest thing that can change the way we perceive ourselves when we've been through this is when the light goes on that I'm not defective. There's not something wrong with me here. This is a result of the environment that I was in. This is a result of, I need to heal from this. This is not that I'm wrong, I'm bad, I'm faulty. I think that's the most important thing that a woman can pick up on.
Yeah.
As I said before, when you're knocked into your fight or flight, it changes everything. And what's also interesting is that when you're knocked into your fight or flight full on, it takes 3 full days under the best circumstances to get back to normal.
Yeah.
Okay, to get back to baseline. And then if you have these constant reminders churning, right, you never seem to get your feet underneath you. And it's not because you're not doing it right. It's because there's physical limitations to your body, and you can't do that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I don't even think we realize that. And I think the other piece is that, God loves you, right? No matter what. And so if you have to flee a marriage that is consistently abusive, God does not turn his back on you. You haven't, you haven't disappointed him somehow because, you're leaving. He still loves you, right?
Right.
So what are some of those things that women carry around that you kind of help process through?
Well, that aspect of it, okay? The idea that marriage is supposed to be a covenant. Marriage is supposed to be forever. However, there's also limitations on what we can tolerate and what we should be expected to do. Okay. And one of the things that was helpful for me, if you've ever read 2 Timothy 3, it's this huge list of all these terrible behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, abusive, um, I, I'm not thinking of all of them right now, but like all these different behaviors, right? And at the end of it, it says, have nothing to do with such people. They are the kind of men that worm their way into homes of gullible women who are weighed down by sins and all kinds of evil desires, always learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth.
Yep.
And when I actually taught a class at a local pregnancy center. And what I told the women was this: I had to be able to admit I was that gullible woman. I was the woman who believed that somehow I could deal with this man who had all these issues and somehow do things differently so he did not behave the way that he was behaving. Um, that's not what God intends for us.
Right.
Quite honestly, if our men are leaders of our homes, it's not up to us how they behave. They need to step out and do what God's called them to do, be the man that God's called them to be,
Yep.
and lead the way he says to lead. It's not us.
Absolutely. And that's not what he modeled for us for a marriage. Like, if we are the bride, that is not how he treats his bride, right?
No. And, I told you we had some really straightforward conversations. And my husband is actually a volunteer firefighter. So there was a point before we got married, and I sat him down and I'm like, look, if you expect to be married to me, you better be prepared to die for me, literally, because that's what the Bible says.
Yeah. Yep.
And this man looked at me and he kind of shook his head and he goes, well, I would for anybody else. So I suppose I would for you too.
I love that. That's awesome. But yeah, true, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I tell people, I'm like, that wasn't exactly the romantic response I expected. It was accurate. It was true, because I know that my husband would literally take a bullet for me. I mean, I know that.
Right.
I know that with all my heart. But the way he said it, it was just like, wow, now I feel special. Okay, I'd die for anybody. I'd die for you too.
That's great. Okay, so how can the church better support survivors, not just in word, but in action?
Well, I think what they need to do is make it clear that safety is above all else. I'm actually, part of what I'm trying to do is set up some free seminars for pastors.
Mm-hmm.
And make pre-recorded sessions of the classes available for Christian agencies or for churches who want to do something to help. But the big thing is to recognize that women are a gift from God. We are supposed to be treated as the weaker vessel, and the weaker vessel not being inferior, but being precious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we need to be treating our daughters, is that you're precious, you're important to God, and you deserve to be treated well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's one breakthrough moment you've had that you've witnessed with a client or a follower that reminds you of why you do this work?
Well, I think the biggest thing, what we went back to talking about before, is what I'm worth to God, right? Eventually I'm going to add another course too. I'm still in the process of working on it. Not sure when I'm going to get done with it, but it's called Princess with the Crooked Crown.
Mm-hmm.
Is the title that I want for it. And the reason is because I thoroughly believe that God wants to show us how much he loves us, and we're his daughters.
Yep.
And what I tell women is that you are God's daughter, therefore you are a princess. That is birthright, and nothing you can do will take that away from you. You can make any mistake in the book. You can be downright rude. You can do anything wrong in the world, but that's your birthright. You're God's, and he loves you, and he loves you just the way you are.
Yep.
And if you can grab a hold of that, not only do you not tolerate that kind of abusive behavior from somebody else, but the more secure you are in God, it's weird, because the more secure you are in God, the less you have that impulse to
Yeah.
sin, I think. I know that might sound weird, but it's like if I look at God as my daddy, if I look at God as my father, and I had that kind of relationship with him, then it's a security that gives me the ability to do the things that he wants me to do, even the things that are difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how does personal development intersect with spiritual growth in your own life and in your coaching?
I think what you have to be able to do is look at what your limitations are. Okay. It's the idea that I'm made a certain way. I need to be able to look at myself honestly and know what I can and can't do
Yeah.
and be able to work with that and grow from that. Look at my weaknesses as okay, these are the areas that I need to look at to grow
Absolutely.
and not condemn myself for that.
And I think, that we are all created for a purpose. And so if you try to move outside, like my strengths aren't in, underwater basket weaving or, like whatever it is. So
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to try to do that. Or, you will never see me on the top of an oil tower because that's just not my thing. And it's
Yeah,
okay. Like, it doesn't make me less of a person because I can't do that. It just means like I was created for something different.
that's true. We're all made for a very unique purpose. And I think what we need to be able to do is look to God to find that purpose. And to me, also, one of the things for me was the idea that I tell people once in a while, when we'll start discussing these things, I wouldn't change anything in my life. Now, have I been through a lot? Yeah. But looking at it now on this side of it, if I get one young girl who talks to me and then goes, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I see that. I see that as valid. I see your point. And one young girl walks away, or one woman actually leaves before she gets severely hurt. Those things are what make it worth it that I've been through what I've been through. It's not the idea that God kept me out of these awful things. A lot of the things that happen in life, we bring upon ourselves by our own poor decisions, and we have to accept that. But God will actually take those things that are messy and terrible and nasty, and he can use them for good if we give him the opportunity to do that. And I think that's where you need to really look at it.
Absolutely. And I think that I know this is true of me, and I know in talking to you that it's probably true of you, is that, the horrible negative things that we have faced in our life only serve to help us serve others are going through those
Yeah,
kind of things. That,
very
that
definitely.
really God does use evil for good. And that, the things that have happened to me, I have been able to help moms. I've been able to help, high school girls who are, maybe in a relationship that's not healthy. And it just is amazing how he's used it.
Yeah, I think it's important to think of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the fourth man in the fire all the time. I, I I have come to realize that God is not as concerned about my comfort as he is about my spiritual condition.
Yeah.
He can use those things that are difficult to help me step out in other ways.
Sure.
I just have to be open to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, is there anything that I haven't asked you about this topic or about the work that you're doing that you just really want to share?
Um, I think the big thing is look at the whole picture. What I'm trying to do is not just recovery, but prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's really something for everybody. If you're struggling with communication with your husband, there's something for that. If you're struggling with overcoming past hurts, there's something for that. Um, and I actually gave you a couple of free access to what I call my coping kit,
Mm-hmm.
which that can be beneficial for everybody. It's
Absolutely.
basically 12 different um, video recordings that deal with exercises that you can do that help kind of calm your amygdala down, that help with anxiety, that can help with those kinds of things. Um, so there's a lot there to look at. And as I said, my hope is to have the Princess with the Crooked Crown up running. I'm not going to say a date because everything, but as soon as possible. So I feel like there's a little something for everybody to kind of benefit from. and I want to really be able to reach anybody to let them know how to avoid these situations as well as how to recover from these situations.
Yep. I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit to something a little bit lighter.
Sure.
So you are a Jeep girl. And
Yes, I am.
how did that start? And what's your favorite kind of Jeep adventure?
It started because, believe it or not, I've loved to look of a Wrangler for years, and I just never thought I'd buy one. And I have always driven little sports cars before this, believe it or not. But my car needed some repairs, and we had this list of stuff, and we had talked about maybe getting a Jeep, and then all of a sudden, okay, we're gonna go look, and we got one. The funny part is that my husband would then start driving my Jeep. So he would drive his truck to and from work. And then every time there was an excuse, he would be driving my Jeep. The joke is that all the purple bling that is on my Jeep was put there to keep him from driving it, and it didn't work. So now he has a Jeep too. So we both have Jeeps.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we weren't on here and I could magically get my jet out of the shop, where would we go for coffee or chai in Florida?
Rear View Coffee. If you want something different, because it's a mom and pop more.
Oh yeah, fun.
Yeah. So not a Starbucks.
No.
And it's just up the street here.
Oh, hey, that works perfect. Okay, so now I always like to end my show with what's called rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
I'll ask you 10 questions, and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Oh, that's
Ready?
dangerous. Okay.
What's your go-to comfort food when life feels crazy?
Oh, chocolate.
What's one song that instantly shifts your mood?
I can only imagine.
Oh, I'm going to imagine. Morning person or night owl?
Oh, I know.
One book you recommend to everyone about healing or self-growth?
Safe people.
When you're feeling totally overwhelmed, what's the first thing you do to ground yourself?
Oh, that's a hard one for a counselor. What? Um, in emergencies, deep breaths. If it's just something where I'm feeling a little not good about things, probably spending some time with my husband. Just that kind of a thing.
I love that. Okay. What's one thing that you're currently obsessed with? A hobby, a show, anything?
Oh, our Jeeps. We go everywhere. We're going to Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion. We just got back from Jeep Beach, and then we're going to go to one in Ocala for Jeeptoberfest. And actually, another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be a vendor there to distribute stuff about the website.
Oh, fun.
It's really cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so if you give your younger self one piece of advice about relationships, what would it be?
Value yourself.
I love that. Okay, beach vacation or mountain getaway? Both, you can take your Jeep.
Beach. I'm definitely a Florida girl.
Yeah. Favorite quote that you always come back to when things get really hard?
If a flower doesn't bloom, you don't blame the flower. You change the environment in which it lives.
That's good. Okay, last thing. One thing that you're really, really proud of.
I think the thing that I'm proud of the most is that I've actually been able to walk away from what I experienced and not have any of the symptoms that I used to have. I know there's a lot of blame that's associated when you're dealing with domestic violence, and you get attached to these people who will tell you, it's all your fault. If you would just do this or that
Yeah.
differently, it would never happen, right?
Yep.
So on this side of it, to look at myself and go, yeah, I have some issues, as we all do, but not those issues.
Right.
So for me, it's just the idea that I can say that and I can talk to somebody and I can tell them you don't have to be this way
Yep.
forever.
Yep.
You put yourself in some bad circumstances, but you don't have to be that way.
It's such a vicious cycle, isn't it? Like, if you just do this, if you would just make him dinner every night, it would just be better. So then you go, okay, I gotta make dinner every night. That's what I gotta do, right? And then it's like, okay, and yet everything continues. Okay, well, if you just, satisfy him sexually, then it'll just be so much better, right? And it just is like this performance cycle, and it takes so much courage and so much strength to break that cycle and to get free.
Well, and I think one thing that you need to remember, okay, God said that marriage is supposed to be the reflection of Christ in the church. Christ gave unconditional love to the church. He died for the church when the church was literally saying, they wanted his head, basically. They wanted to see him hang on the cross.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So when you look at your marriage, your husband is supposed to be that person to you, the one who would literally lay down his life for you. And I think that it's important for women to remember that this is not about, whether I cook a meal just right or say things just the right way, that I have a right to be able to say when I'm hurt. I have a right to be able to say when things bother me or I have a difference of opinion. There's freedom that's necessary in a healthy relationship.
Yep.
And you've got to be able to have that, or it's just draining what will happen to you in the other circumstances, in abusive circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely freedom in Christ.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to all our moms and listeners, because I think that too often situations happen like this and nobody talks about it, right? They're home suffering. And so I always love anytime I can incite some, because they can listen to a podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're struggling, I'm going to put some resources in the description, including how to connect with Robin. So we will see you until next time. Talk to you soon.